And admit everyone from the lobby. Okay, thank you. As I say, it's 2 o'clock on 23rd of February. This is the Companies Committee. If I can move to the agenda, if I can do the register of attendance, please.
Certainly, Chairman. Councillor Graham Gill.
Present.
Councillor John Dawson.
Present.
Councillor Mike Exton.
Present.
Councillor Exton is subbing for Councillor Adams. Councillor Ashley Baxter.
Present.
Councillor Philip Knowles. I believe Councillor Knowles may be late joining. Councillor Susan Sandal.
Mr. Chairman, it's Councillor Dilks here. We have put in a request to that I would substitute for Councillor Knowles. He's unfortunately got a hospital appointment with his wife.
Oh, thank you for letting me know, Councillor Dilks.
Lucy, if I can say, I'm sorry it didn't come to you, but it did go to Democratic Services and it went from the leader of the independent group.
All right.
I did see that, yeah.
Councillor Ian Stokes.
Present.
Sorry, Lucy, I didn't get a chance to reply when you called my name. I am present.
Apologise.
Susan.
Councillor Mark Whittington.
Present.
And of course, Councillor Sandals is here.
Okay, and if I can just record my thanks to those substitutes who may have recorded themselves at late notice for this meeting. Thank you for stepping in. Moving on, disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest on the committee today? Any disclosures of interest? As a reminder, you can specify disclosure. You can disclose interest at any stage. Okay, moving on. The minutes from the meeting of the 21st of October of last year. Are there any comments on the minutes of the meeting from the 21st of October? Are there any comments on those minutes? Okay, there are no comments on the minutes. Therefore, I'm going to assume that that's a true and fair record. Are any members wanting to vote on these, or can we move on, recognising that as a true and fair record of that meeting?
Councillor Gill, could I just say I'll abstain because I wasn't present at the meeting?
Okay, fair enough. Are any of those members that are present wishing to have a vote on this, or can we assume that's a true and fair record of that meeting? There are no comments, so let's move on to item 4, updates from the previous meeting. This is agenda item 4, page 11. Are there any comments on the updates from the previous meeting from the committee? There don't seem to be any comments. So can I just ask on page 18, the second item about environment SK, we asked to change this at the last meeting to specify that rather than this just be simply passed to the communications team, that the environment SK develop some sort of communication strategy to communicate the good work that they're doing. I noticed that's not been changed on here, therefore I assume that that action has not been done yet. Can I just clarify? So just to confirm that rather than just simply pass that to the comms team, the request from the committee was there's a lot of positive work happening for Environment SK and that they should work with the communications team to develop a communication strategy. If we can update that, please. Are there any other comments on the updates from the previous meeting? Okay, there are no comments, therefore I'd like to move on to item 5, which is gravitas. We're receiving a verbal update on the business plan from Gravitas Housing Limited.
Thank you, Chairman. Shall I bring that forward?
Sorry, this is Councillor Dobson. Yeah, thank you.
Correct. Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just a quick update on Wherry's Lane. Our current position is that we've got 14 units still available, 3 reserved and 8 are completed. The flats are going well, but I've not had any more physical viewings since last year. I have asked the team to send a brief feedback once they have it on each viewing, so we're up to date. Unfortunately, I can't see any further on the townhouses. They're all still empty, and there was not much coming in on those. No viewings at all yet this year. Rental is strong in Bourne, so there could be another option for us to look at rental. Mortgages for DMS, we have had information that Halifax might look at it again, but it could be a case-by-case basis at the moment, and we would certainly try them if we got someone who wanted to proceed with one of those discounted houses or flats, sorry, and try our best to get it placed with them subject to the app meeting criteria. We've got no major investors at the moment looking at larger blocks, taking larger blocks of them, but I have got one I've got that is looking is 75% RICS market value at the moment, which is massively below where we would want to be, and I'm not sure that we want to let them go for that sort of price. So Pygott and Crone, who are acting as our agents now, had one viewing on the 15th of February, that the buyer is still not in a financial position to move forward yet, even with the discounted option. They have another gentleman interested, but he has property to sell, so can't make any offers until this is under offer. I think it's a very difficult time to exchange contracts and to get moving again at the moment, but I am having another meeting with Pygott and Crone this coming Friday. That's it, Chairman. Thank you.
Richard Wiles wants to add some comments.
Yeah, just I know that sounds relatively, I mean, it's a very frank and honest assessment, and I think it's a fair reflection of where we're at. But I think, to be fair, 44% of the properties have either been sold or have got a reservation on them. As Councillor Dobson says, there are some difficulties with some of the townhouses, but we're reviewing those. We did meet with some agents over the November-December period, and we have relaunched the whole development with a new agent, which has given it some fresh impetus, a whole new marketing strategy that supported that, a refresh of the website, new fit-for-purpose pictures of each of the residents, each of the apartments, each of the properties, and we're optimistic that there will be, particularly as spring looms large, we are optimistic there will be a resurgence in interest. But as Councillor Dobson says, we keep all our options open in terms of whether or not the sales are directly the way forward, or whether we need to broaden our thinking into different markets. And to be fair, that's what we always said when the company came before the shareholder committees. It was in those days. We always said that we would look at all markets, be it sales or be it rentals. But if you recall, the council has given, by way of equity and by way of loan, investment into the company, and rightly so, the council is expecting a return from that investment. So the strategy up to this point has always been on sales, because sales obviously will repay that debt in a smoother and swifter manner. But clearly we need to respond to the market, and if we're unable to fulfil that original request from the council, then of course we need to consider all options. So that's why we're not ruling anything out at this stage. But having just engaged with a new agent who's full of energy and enthusiasm, then we remain hopeful that the original objective of selling the units and repaying the loan back to the council and considering any new opportunities for that company, that remains our priority at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask on a point of process why we didn't get a paper for this? I mean, it sounds as if there has been progress and there's certainly been activity. I think it would have been useful to have that summarised in a brief one page, even if there's only one table in the paper. Well, why did we not get a paper for this?
I think To be honest, Mr. Chairman, the direction of travel since the company, mindful again, it's a full agenda this afternoon with some very meaty topics on it and a lot of information for the committee to consider for this afternoon. The direction of travel for Gravitas since it last updated the committee has been relatively modest. I don't think the sales have significantly had a resurgence since we last updated you. The only material change has been that the company has gone away and re-established a new relationship with a new agent. So when you cut it back to its component parts, that's probably the only real update that we are able to give the committee. So that's why we didn't feel it was necessary to burden the committee with another agenda paper, given the fact you've got some significant paperwork already this afternoon. So we're happy to bring one back to the next meeting. That's not.
I was going to say, nevertheless, I still find that is an update. Yeah, there was an update there. I think I was probably expecting a paper from this one. We do have I have got other questions. I'll go to committee members first. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Dobson and to Richard Wiles for the update. There isn't an up-to-date business plan for Gravitas Housing, as far as I know. The business plan which exists is over 3 years old. And that's fine as long as there are no other business aspirations, as at the moment you might expect there wouldn't be. There aren't any other projects in the pipeline, and we have 14 available properties. Since Pigott and Crone were taken on in November, are any of those 11, any of those 8 completed and 3 reserved, have any of those happened since November, or is it just kind of enthusiasm and optimism that the new people have brought us? Have they brought us any actual sales or reservations? And finally on that, when we do get an updated, either a progress report or an updated business plan next time, can we be serious about the potential for using the properties in different ways? Because it strikes me as quite embarrassing that we've built houses for the private sector that we can't sell, but we haven't built any houses for the public sector for the people who cannot be housed at the moment. It just seems a weird. At the time, it made total sense to build houses in a thriving market, and I'm aware that we've had a global pandemic, but at the moment we've got people without houses, we've got no houses to provide them, but we have got empty houses that we can't sell. It just looks daft, doesn't it?
Councillor Baxter, I think your second point is a useful contribution, but I think that's towards the work plan for when this does come back to us. So I think we will certainly return to the idea of the Gravitas business plan when that's presented to us, in broadening it potentially. Can you comment on the first point about the specific?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And just for the record, Mr. Chairman, there is a valid in time business plan for Gravitas. It's 2017 to 2021. It was last presented to this committee a year ago, but it is still in date, and it's primarily focused on the Wales Lane development. That's the only project that has been commissioned by the council through Gravitas to deliver, and that's why you're right, a new business plan needs to come forward as a fledgling document. And I think in the past we've come forward with potential sites that Gravitas could have some role in bringing forward, but at the moment in time the only arrangement between the council and the company is delivery of Wherries Lane, so the business plan is still focused on that outcome.
We'll discuss that later when we come to the work plan.
And just in terms of just in terms of Pigott and Crone, the timeline is such that Pigott and Crone were only formally mobilised on board, if you like, in January of this year. Yes, we interviewed a number of agents back in November, but of course we had to go through an assessment process and they were awarded it, and then we had to negotiate the removal of Rosedale's and the mobilisation of Pigott and Crone, and they obviously had to have their marketing literature, etc., prepared in the background, so we had a seamless transfer of agent support between the two. So they haven't brought anything through to sale yet, but to be fair to them, we're only talking weeks, not months, that we've had them. But rest assured, Councillor Dobson and Councillor Cook are hot on their heels to make sure that they deliver what they said they could. So that's that's certainly the pressure's on them to come good on it. And just finally, Mr. Chairman, just on the rentals, and of course as we said in our introduction, nothing's off the table. But I would go back to the point that the council has a commercial loan in place with the company of 1.6 million, and at the moment there's a loan expectation that will be repaid by Gravitas. Now clearly, if it's unable to secure capital receipts, it's got no income, frankly, coming through other than rentals. Rentals will not be sufficient to repay that loan for a significant period of time. So there is a conversation between the council and the company to rebase and reassess that financial arrangement. And if it works for both parties, then clearly we will support that direction of travel. But it's not unilaterally in the hands of Gravitas just to decide it will go down the rental market, because it has implications on the council in terms of the debt that's owed to it.
Fine. I'd like to move on. Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to just support the comments that you made, Mr. Chairman, about the lack of a formal paper on this. I just heard some of the comments that Richard's made, and there are some financial sort of implications around this. And even if it was just one sheet of A4 or 2 sheets of A4, you know, we've had this sort of debate in the past at this committee about the lack of paperwork and reports and stuff like this. And you know, I have to say, I was hoping the message would be starting to get through by now, that we do actually need to see stuff in writing, written reports, because it's quite difficult at times when you're sitting here, you're receiving a verbal update to actually take down and note all of the key things that have been said to you. That's all, Mr. Chairman. I find in the absence of a written report, I do not feel that I can properly scrutinise this. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but that's.
I don't. Yeah, Councillor Whittington. Yeah, we'll. All I can suggest is we bring it back next time as a complete report.
That's noted. Councillor Ian Stokes.
Well, yes, I'm going to quite disagree with you, Councillor Gill and Mark Whittington, because I think a verbal update on something when nothing has really happened is quite in order for the committee to have at this stage, and we await something when things have happened, which they certainly haven't at the moment.
Well, I believe we just received an update that there has been movement in the last quarter. So that's, I mean, you're right, it wouldn't have been the world's longest update, but we have received an update and there has been changes. So we'll disagree on that point. But moving on, Councillor Phil Dilks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Support the call for a written report next time. Understand perhaps why there wasn't one this time, but next time is in. I know that the next companies committee is in 2 months' time, which is conveniently at it's past year end anyway. And so, I mean, I just wonder if I could request within that written report that we're asking for, if we could ask for the financial position, the updated financial position, particularly in respect of the loan and the debt of the 1.6 million that Richard has mentioned. I appreciate that may have to be in pink papers, or may not. I don't know.
Thanks for that, Councillor Dilks. Okay. I just have a couple of comments, but it sounds as if more information is coming back. First of all, thank you for the update. Obviously, with the stamp duty holiday finishing, unless things change in the budget, between now and the next update, it's going to get more challenging to sell these assets. And I'd like to understand a little bit more about how we're selling these. So when this does come back, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the sales strategy, because the market for selling houses is only getting more, unless the Chancellor extends the stamp duty holiday, but there's been no indication of that. It's only going to get more difficult, and so in an environment where it's more difficult to sell properties, I'd like to understand how that's impacting our sales strategy. So just a few updates there. I'll take a couple of officer comments and then I'd like to move on. Councillor Kellam Cook.
Oh, thank you, Graham. I didn't know I was an officer just yet. But,
oh, sorry. Cabinet member, sorry.
Thank you. If I can just say about the issue of reports, because I think we just need to be very clear now. It is up to the committee what it is they would like in terms of reports. Now, as far as I was aware, it was just the committee wanted a brief update which has obviously taken place as a verbal update. Now, if that isn't good enough for the committee, then I think, Councillor Gill, you need to be clear as chairman about what it is you're expecting as a committee, what you would like moving forward, because it is very easy for us to produce a one-pager with some financial stats on, but as long as we both understand where we are coming from and what it is you require, then we can deliver that. So I think we can overcome that for the next meeting. In terms of Pygott and Crone, obviously I know Councillor Dobson and Mr. Wiles has mentioned them. They have produced obviously new photos, new marketing material, so it does look much better now if you do look at it on Rightmove in comparison to what it did used to look like. And I think obviously it's about looking at all the options as to how we can dispose of this asset to bring that money back to the council. And, you know, I'm also interested in the potential of it being rented out as well, as that might be another solution to get people into those premises, but also to get some revenue back into the council, into the company as well. But obviously we can bring that back into the next meeting as a formal report.
Fine. I'd like to move on. I mean, as I say, just in terms of summary, just to respond to that, I mean, I'd like to challenge the assumption that nothing's happening on this. Stuff is happening. I know from speaking to Councillor Dobson, Councillor Cook, stuff is happening, and I think that it helps in transparency and helps members understand that we are doing things on this if there is a very brief paper. But okay, fair enough. That we'll move on from that, and we'll expect a broader report at the next meeting. Moving on to item 6, East Midlands Building Control. I believe this is with Ian Yates.
Chairman, if possible, I'll just introduce and then I'll pass on to Ian. It's Gary here.
Please do, Gary. Yeah, hi. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Just to, first of all, pass the apologies of Councillor Dr. Peter Mosley, who would have liked to have attended, but is away with work with a customer today, so was unable to join us, but has been involved in the process. Just a couple of things to flag. You asked as a committee for an abridged business plan in regards to the East Midlands Building Consultancy, on the basis that it wasn't a company in the same way as some of your other companies. In actual fact, I think hopefully you agree there's actually quite a full business plan in any case, which we've tried to share with you to provide a fulsome update, but you did request a lesser amount of information. And I think, as you've noted previously, Chairman, the business plan itself is exempt. So if you are wanting to go into any elements of the commercially sensitive information in there, then you'll obviously want to move into exempt session. But I'm here as well to help with Ian to answer any questions, but Ian is going to present the detail of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This is a cooperation agreement. You've titled it a business plan, but it's more a cooperation of our partnership. So yes, I was grateful for the detail. Ian, would you like us to go into closed session now, or are you happy to talk in public session?
No, I'm very happy to talk in public session for now, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I gave quite a bit of background at the start there in terms of what building control is, and many of you will be probably well aware of it. But any building alterations in this country need approval to meet the appropriate standards and safety arrangements around that. And in the past, if you needed those building regs controls approvals, you would have to have gone to your local council. So just a little bit of history. What happened is that the market changed. The government created a market and then basically said, you don't have to go to your local council for your building control. You can actually go to something called approved inspectors. So they created a marketplace. So effectively, just to explain, whilst this is a partnership agreement, it is quite a commercial world. The actual inspectors, East Midlands Building Control, have to compete in the marketplace with approved inspectors. So that's why the attached plan of how we go about delivering that commercial business is exempt. We've tried to pull out as much as possible into the covering report to explain exactly how it operates in terms of the total picture. The partnership, why did we introduce a partnership? I think it's fair to say that a lot of local authorities where they operate on their own in that commercial world have struggled And you can see from some of the information that I've provided in here that the partners did have deficits at the start of this position in 2016. We had a deficit of just over £100,000, and that's on the trading side. But that has actually been cleared, and that's I guess the benefit of the partnership, sharing the overheads, the management overheads between three authorities. The model of a partnership operating, this is a very good case of showing how it can work very positively in terms of delivering what we're after. Sharing the overheads, sharing the expertise, large enough to attract employees that want to work with us, and create those greater skill sets in one organisation. So I think that's a little bit of explanation about the building regs and how we actually compete. Just also I've had to explain, because it's a little bit complicated in the sense that there's two sets of fees and works here. There's the fee earning. The fee earning are those that would compete with the approved inspectors. So we have to account for the costs of when we do fee earning work that's in competition, and therefore we're trading, and we have to make sure that through our business plans that we trade at a break-even position. We're not allowed in theory to make a profit. You can make a surplus, deficits each year, but the whole idea and the aim is to try and balance the books over a 3-year period. What we've referred to in the report as non-fee earning is the element that each local authority has to retain, even though there's a private provision in terms of approved inspectors. The district councils or the city councils, etc., or unitaries have to keep and maintain the registers of all building regulation work. You also have to provide certain advice free of charge, and those costs are what we call the non-fee earning work, and that falls on the general fund of each local authority. So there's two elements in terms of the business that we're trying to do here in terms of that partnership. One is to compete, be able to offer the services at the right fees, but keep our costs within that to break even, and at the same time to provide the best value for money on the costs of what the costs are that fall on the council taxpayer, as I've explained, those non-fee earning costs and services we have to provide. I think that you'll see from the figures that are provided more in the detail, perhaps in the appendix, in the business plan, the service works very, very well in terms of the costs. It trades well, it's competing, it's making small surpluses, it's clearing the deficits that existed, it's done well in the last few years. You also wanted an update, I think, on the furlough position. And you'll see from the graphs there, chart 1, you'll see that when COVID hit in April, we saw a significant fall off in the level of activity. And it was a pretty scary world, wasn't it? We didn't know what the impact would be on the levels of work. And as an organisation, as the council, we provide a whole range of different services, and the impacts have been different on different areas. But we found that when it got to that point, actually trading against the fee income that we had to earn, acting commercially, we decided to furlough a number of staff. And we furloughed 12. We knew we'd got to keep the core, but you can see that a significant 2/3 of the work activity disappeared overnight, 2/3 of the income disappeared overnight. We monitored the activity as furlough continued. It hit really hard. I think that was mainly down to the supply, the merchants, building merchants supplying the industry. And we realised that there was pretty much a close down at that point in time. You'll see on the graphs the fantastic news and experience that we had, that work came back pretty quickly. So we tracked individuals, it tracked the work activity, and individuals returned. And there's a table 7 that details when individuals returned, given all the information there in the actual business plan that's attached. That information is there. So the great news was that information, as it kept coming through, was that the work activities rebounded, and they came back to a point where you'll see in the later months, from probably July was high, but August dipped. But from then onwards, we found that the level of work activity was significantly higher than the year before. And that was obviously, as many of you may be aware, the reality that a lot of people change their habits, working environments, etc., and home extensions and lots of small types of work around that, as behaviours changed and people made different decisions, created a lot of work in terms of the small building arrangements and that market. And we've benefited greatly. The team have been the same size, and you can see that in the latter months they've done a fantastic job actually delivering the actual work activity that's come through. And financially, by the year end, we should be in a very good position compared to where I thought we were going to be in April, May, or even June at the start of the year. So overall, the partnership is based on a three-way split, a pretty fair three-way split. The costs are shared 3 ways. That means that the trading surpluses are split 3 ways. The costs that fall on for the non-fee earning work is split 3 ways equally as well. So the partnership works very, very well. It's straightforward, it's simple. It has a management board where the 3 directors from each authority meet. Don't get me wrong, this is a relatively small team, but it covers a large area, being Rushcliffe, Newark and Sherwood and South Kesteven. Operates very well. I think the figures you can see in there in terms of the arrangement show that position, and the agreement between the 3 authorities is an ongoing, extended each year, and each partner could remove with a 6-month notice. But each partner is very, very satisfied at this current point in time and are very happy to continue. I'll also point out that the other 2 partners pay South Kesteven a management fee of £20,000 each, which also contributes to South Kesteven being the lead authority in terms of employing all the individuals that deliver this service. I think I'll stop there because basically, I'm very happy to answer any questions. Hopefully I can do that as needed.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thank you, Ian. Just as a reminder to members, we are in public session at the moment. If you want to delve down onto the pink papers, that's absolutely fine, but you'll have to ask me to go into private session to do that. So if you can keep your comments to address the comments that have been made, or advise me to go into private session. Councillor Whittington, please.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I do want to refer to the pink papers, but I want to refer to I'll just give the page to page 30. If I may.
Okay, so you'd like us to move into.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if my question is. I know it's under the pink papers, but I'm not sure if my question is that. I don't know. It might be deemed to be commercially sensitive, I guess.
Okay, so we need to go into private session. So the
Chairman, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I wonder if there are any other questions for the open part, so that as much that's in the open part can be dealt with before sessions. Otherwise, you'll be going in and out of private session potentially. And whether Councillor Whittington's question might actually be something that could be answered, perhaps he could ask it, and then we can form a view as to whether it's properly exempt or able to be answered in the open session.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Whittington, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, my question really concerns the map that appears on page 30. And you can obviously see the geographical area of the partnership. And sort of looking at that, there obviously seems to be a sort of a large gap between areas 1, 2, 7, 8 and 6. And I'm just kind of thinking that maybe going forward, would we sort of look to maybe extend the partnership out to maybe try to entice some of those other areas that are close to us to sort of join in with us as well? That was going to be the question, but I'm not sure if that's can be answered in an open session or not.
I'm quite happy to answer that question, I think. Don't you think, Sheen?
Actually, Karen, do you want to just comment on that first?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's worth, before Ian just comes in there, Ian will probably have some more detailed conversation. There was an early conversation with one authority, a partner authority, well, a close by authority recently, and in the discussions that we're having with South Holland at the moment, there potentially is an opportunity there, and this is something also we're exploring with potential partnership working, because this isn't a company, it's a partnership working with Rutland County Council. But that's the discussions that are ongoing, but nothing confirmed as yet. So hopefully that helps. They'll hopefully fill in some of the gaps.
Ian, do you want to add to that, or?
No, simply just to add that, yeah, you're quite right. When you look at that map, you would naturally approach any partners that would fit in with that, and I can assure you that different conversations have been had over time with individual partners and potential partners to see if there's and normally they approach us, so it just depends on what those arrangements come out, but absolutely.
Fine. Councillor Dilks.
Sorry, and my second question was going to be if I may, and
please do, Councillor.
Sorry, and are you aware, are there any other sort of similar type of arrangements that other local authorities enter into as sort of groups of councils in partnership?
I can answer. Yes, we are aware of different arrangements. We do monitor them, and we have, we do review the options that can be available to us. But at the minute, if that's what you're referring to, there's a similar partnership to this in South Cambridgeshire, and there's some different models that operate in Derbyshire, for example. So they have been looked at.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dilks.
Mr. Chairman, I think the Chief Executive and Ian has probably answered what I was going to ask, which was, is it possible, feasible and desirable to sort of extend or try to extend this successful partnership perhaps closer to home? Yes, I was thinking of the particular council that Karen mentioned, very close geographically to us, so I welcome that. But may I just take the opportunity to say thank Ian for his report that he's given us, and I've known Ian over 20 years, I think. We didn't get off to the best start, Ian, did we? A long time ago. We'll not go into that now, but I just wanted to say, if I may, I don't know if he'll be presenting any more reports to us before very long, but I would say thank you ever so much, Ian, for this report and all the reports that you've given us over the years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Dilks. We'll let Ian respond to that, go red-faced in a few minutes. But are there any other comments from the committee? Yeah, I have a couple of comments. I was searching for a benchmark myself. There's obviously a major benchmark in Norfolk, CNC Building Control, which I think is a huge partnership of, was it 5 or 6 building district councils there. How would we compare with CNC Building Control, which I believe is a highly profitable building control area?
In terms of benchmarking, I have undertaken some benchmarking about a year ago, and we did have some external benchmarking review work that assisted us in looking at how our operation, how it could operate, and how it pitched and how it was performing. But the key thing in doing any benchmarking is to look at, one, on the fee earning, are they trading and breaking even? And then on the non-fee earning, what's that cost that's being charged back to the council taxpayers? And what I learned was, when I looked at those because the accounts are read, should be published on each authority, so you can do that benchmarking. Some don't publish it, but they should be doing. When you look at that benchmarking, it's very much the case that some people can have very, very low recharges. No one had a recharge as low as we did to the individual, to our general fund. So on the non-fee earning, we performed really, really, really well. And I did some benchmarking with some local authorities that stood alone because they're not in a partnership, and it clearly demonstrated that. But then when I was being told some authorities are really, really high performing, what I found was on their fee earning work, they were trading at a loss. And there was one authority that had built up £600,000 worth of loss in 2 years. So we have done that benchmarking. I haven't benchmarked with everybody. Sometimes it depends on the nature of the partnership. If it's in the public sector, you should be able to readily get the information off the accounts from their websites. And that can be redone. But when I did that, I did put this part of this in this report, but it's quite complicated to do with the fee earning, non-fee earning. But I can provide that offline but by all means, if you'd like me to do that.
I think that'll be useful. I've got a couple of other comments as well. The building control sector is changing as a result of the recommendations out of the Grenfell disaster, which is hugely changing the relationship between local authority building control and the private sector. Basically, it's capping the amount of business that private sector companies can do. How do you think that must be a huge opportunity for a partnership like this? Do you see that as a partner, or are there missing implications I've not seen in the public sector?
I think there's two elements to that. One is that you're right, the recommendations that are likely to come out, it's going to be probably your larger organisations that can handle perhaps the future in terms of what's required under the new regulation. So a partnership is in a better position to actually undertake what might come out of that. I think as an individual authority, recruiting the right expertise and training people up under the new regs is a burden. And in history, when we used to run this on our own, recruiting that expertise and it being lost to the private sector was always an issue, always a problem to be able to compete. In terms of that huge opportunity, perhaps larger partnerships may assist in that. But ironically, as we sit, obviously we're not supposed to make a profit. So all we can do is try and reduce the burden on the council taxpayer, but you're supposed to account for everything separately. So I think we're keeping a very close eye on what comes out of that, and it's key, the partnership, and I think the size of the partnership, the larger it is, the better it will be able to compete with that without going into great detail.
And you've touched on my final question. We're not allowed to make a profit. Clearly, a lot of people are making profits in this sector. It's a very profitable area for private sector entities, although they don't have the burden of having to do the registration work. Have we got this all wrong? Should we have a private venture, a private profit-making venture that could be a revenue centre, that could pay us dividends, that would more than offset the regulatory overhead that we're faced with? I mean, I noticed that CNC in Norfolk are not a private entity, which did come as a bit of a surprise to me. But are we doing this wrong, or is there a reason why we're not a private entity making the kind of profits that they're making in the private sector and using the dividends to offset the regulatory burden that we're faced with?
When we've reviewed this work in terms of looking at the options of the private sector, the evidence has not been able to provide the case strong enough to say that there's for the additional overheads and additional costs, whether or not the element of profit is there in the market. I think that the nature of the work and how you operate across this particular geographical area, and whether you can pick up the larger contracts is key to all that. And I mean larger contracts, not just we do try to get those, but I think so. The evidence to date has been, and the advice that's been given to us was to stay as is and build the partnership. I don't think it should be left at that. I think you should always review the options, and as the market changes and perhaps those regulations that world changes, you should always keep that under review. But obviously, before COVID kicked in, I mean, the world was such that we was doing okay, and then it completely disappeared, the level of uncertainty. So I think you need to keep watching that and keep reviewing it.
Okay, I think that's useful advice, Ian. Thank you for that. The only question that I thought it was a very well written report and a very well written partnership business plan. I'm grateful for the work involved in this. It was actually more detail than I was expecting, given that this is a partnership. Thank you for that, Ian. The only thing that kind of jumped out at me as not looking right, and I'll bow to your better judgment on this, but I'd like to just question it. You say that we have a 50% market share, which would kind of imply with a £600,000 turnover. I think the market's bigger than that. I mean, where are those sorts of figures coming from?
Right, so we keep the register of all building control work that takes place in those three authorities. That's why we have a red hot handle on what our percentage of the market share is. And that's something we're monitoring every month, just to see where we sit, because that's our edge. We've got to keep that market share.
Fine. We probably shouldn't go into any more detail because we're starting to get commercial in that. But as I say, I'm grateful for the detail and thank you for clarifying that point. Can I just before we move on, I would also like to echo Councillor Dilks's comments, and I think I speak for the entire committee and all of the members actually in thanking you for your hard work over the years, for your various presentations, for answering our questions or trying to answer our questions when they've been asked, or avoiding them when they've been asked sensibly either. But that's always been done very professionally, and you'll be a sad loss to the authority. So I'll echo Councillor Dilks's comments on that, and thank you for all of your work. Councillor Cook, you'd like to add some comments?
Thank you, Councillor Joe. It was really just to echo what you were just adding. I think on behalf of Council, Ian, if we can thank you for all the work that you've done. I know this is, I think, your last presentation that you are providing to members until you come back in a different form, which of course we're all looking forward to, hopefully. And I'm sure we all wish you a very happy and healthy retirement. So thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate the comments. I think from my experiences in August last time, I decided to put as much information as I could possibly into this for you.
Okay, well, we were very pleased with it. Are there any other comments on this? I still think that this is a plan we would like to see come back to us. I think as Ian has alluded to today, this market is changing because of the regulatory changes that are coming out of the Grenfell inquiry in building control, and it's one that I think is going to favour larger partnerships, and so this may be something that we can look to grow this partnership. But if there are no other questions, are there any other questions? Okay, well, John and I will talk to East Midlands Building Control as to when these can come back to us. But I thank you, Ian, for the report and all that we've done on this. Okay, thank you. I'd like to move on to item 7, Leisure SK. This is in the hands of. Sorry, is this Paul?
No, I think it's me, actually.
Councillor Dobson, thank you.
Yeah, I know. I'd just like to see you struggling for words. Anyway, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, again. I'm very pleased to present the business plan for Leisure SK Limited, which covers the period January 2021 to March 2022 for consideration by the committee. This report follows on from the endorsement of the Companies Committee of the high-level 5-year business plan for Leisure SK Limited, which was submitted in October 2020. In developing the business plan, it has been necessary to revise the original 5-year financial projections to account for the impact of the third national lockdown. In addition, the first year of trading has been extended to include the period January 2021 to March 2022. This will bring the annual assessment of any financial support the Council may need to provide to Leisure SK Limited into line with the Council's budgeting process. Due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19, it remains very difficult to accurately predict the income and expenditure for Leisure SK Limited over the initial 15-month period. The financial projections contained within the business plan have been developed in conjunction with the Council and also with the continued support of Sport and Leisure Consultancy, SLC. In compiling the budgets, the financial performance of the leisure centres pre-COVID has been used as a baseline. This has been adjusted to take account of how the leisure centres recovered following the previous extended period of lockdown last summer. However, in pulling together the projections, it has also been necessary to make some assumptions, particularly around when the centres may be able to open, and the potential end of the job retention scheme. Since writing the report, further information has already become available, and as things change, the directors of Leisure SK Limited will closely monitor the business plan and ensure that appropriate steps are taken to limit the Council's financial exposure. I am pleased to report that the Board of Directors are now in place, apart from the Director of Growth and Culture, who will join the Board once in post. I am further pleased to report that David Monkhouse was successfully recruited as a non-executive director for Leisure SK Limited. He joined the Board in January and has been a really welcome addition. His knowledge is unsurpassable. You will see from the information appended to this report that David has a wealth of knowledge and experience of the leisure industry. In addition to the financial projections, the business plan for Leisure SK Limited also details the work that has been undertaken to fully establish Leisure SK Limited and the support structures that have been put in place. So I'd like to recommend within the report for Companies Committee to approve the business plan for Leisure SK Limited to cover the period January 2021 to March 2022. And secondly, agree to undertake formal scrutiny to assess the performance of a Leisure SK Limited against business plan twice a year. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee? Okay, then I'll go first. Can you talk a little bit more about the recruitment of David Monkhouse? What the process was for the recruitment of the non-exec director, and can you just confirm that he takes on full non-executive director rights and that there are no exemptions for him? I guess what I'm talking about here is that he is the industry expert, the professional. I'm just wanting to satisfy myself that he has the latitude to take decisions he's comfortable and is not influenced politically.
No, he's certainly not influenced politically. I'm sure we had 3 shortlisted from, I think there were quite a number of them from very strange reasons for wanting to become the non-executive director, I might add. It was, I got a feeling they were approaching 30, you wouldn't believe it. But anyway, we narrowed it down to 3 and we interviewed those 3. David Monkhouse stood out among those 3, and since he's been on board, he's been, absolutely fantastic. I don't know whether, Councillor Cook, who's on the line, would like to endorse that as well, or even the chief executive, she's there. I think he's been he's going to be a really great asset to us.
Councillor Cook, you've asked to comment on that.
I have, yes. So in terms of applications, I think it was 40 that we had in total. And obviously the board then conducted the interviews and did the shortlisting for that. David Monkhouse was by far the person with the most experience and has been certainly very incredibly useful with the plan was to reopen the leisure centres, albeit we then went back into national lockdown. But I know Karen Whitfield is on the call. If Karen can just add to this as well, please.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to add to that. Like the Leader said, we did have in excess of 40 applications for the role. It was widely advertised, so we were very fortunate to get the high-class quality calibre of candidates that we had. The 3 that we interviewed were excellent, but David Moncas did stand up. I have to say, from my experience as an officer attending the Leisure SK board meetings, I don't think David has been influenced in any way by the political members of the board. He's very knowledgeable, gives a forthright opinion, and obviously as the industry expert, he does say that with a lot of gravitas, and the rest of the board members do listen and take on board the comments that he offers. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm grateful for those assurances. If I can just confirm my second point, that he, as a non-exec director, he takes on full non-exec responsibilities. There are no exemptions. Is that a question for yourself, Shaheen? That he takes on full directorship responsibilities?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I can answer that without looking at the terms of his engagement, which I'm happy to and perhaps report back.
Okay, I think it'd be useful to just confirm that. I'm sure that is the case, but I think it is useful just to to understand that. Moving on, Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Feeling that my questions do relate to the exempt papers.
Okay. Before we run on to that, are there any other questions on the non-exempt papers, and then we'll move into exempt session? Do you have any, Councillor Whittington?
No, as I say, they're all relating to the
the members first, then we'll go into exempt session.
I just think that I think one of the problems we have with these sort of hybrid papers, where some of the stuff is discussed in open session, some in closed session, it's really difficult. I just feel that it would be far better if we just went straight into closed session with this, because the danger is that inadvertently a member could be referring to something that's in the public domain, but then it inadvertently refer to something that's in the pink papers without realising it. And I know we should be, wherever possible, looking to all of our affairs in public. But these hybrid papers, my own view is we need to go into private session straight away, Mr. Chairman. But that's just my view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll circle back to you. I think that much of the discussion should be in closed session, but I still think we have an aspiration to be as open as possible for as long as possible. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as far as Councillor Whittington's comments, with respect, I couldn't agree less. I think that everything that could be in the open session should be in the open session, and if it means neatly chopping the bit into two to keep the secret stuff secret and the open stuff open, that's a much better way of going about. The more that we go into closed session, the more suspicious and cynical people get about what the council is doing, and I think that it's
that's registered, Councillor Baxter. Can you,
Mr. Chairman, point of information: Councillor Baxter is actually misquoting what I said. Yeah. I actually said we should be doing everything we possibly could to conduct our matters in public, but inadvertently a member might refer to something in his own papers. At no point did I actually say what he's claiming that I'm saying. I'm actually do resent his comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That correction is noted, and you're right. That's exactly what I heard as well. Let's move on to the questions, Councillor Baxter, please.
Listen to the tape. I wanted to comment on.
Councillor Baxter, no, that I'm not prepared to accept that comment from you.
What? Listen to the tape.
The chairman has quite definitely said what he heard. You are misquoting me, and you deliberately misquoting trouble, as you always do at these meetings. And I'm not prepared to stand up for it anymore.
Okay.
Just take a look at yourself, Councillor Baxter.
Order. Okay. I'd like to move back to the questions, please. We'll move on from that. Councillor Baxter, please.
Thank you. I won't be intimidated.
Councillor Baxter, how dare you? How dare you say that? Mr. Chairman, I wish to make a formal complaint about the behaviour of Councillor Baxter and the insinuations and the claims that he's making against me. This is appalling behaviour, and it's typical of the man.
Okay, that complaint is noted. We can follow up with the monitoring officer after this, and I think we probably will go back to the tapes to review that. But let's move on with the meeting, please. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you very much. Just to comment on pages 61 to 65, no, sorry, 66. Could in future, could we just use a bit of common sense with regard? I mean, I know mistakes happen. We're all under pressure and everything else, but if everybody else has got the same pages 61 to 66 that I have, then they do appear unnecessary. This is more a comment than a question, and that is to say thank you very much to all those who have been involved in the preparation of the Leisure SK business plan. I know it's obviously come out of left field, and I'm really grateful especially to Karen Whitfield for not only putting together the report with the help of her team and the board, but also for keeping us Deepings councillors up to date on progress towards the new leisure centre. Obviously the business plan doesn't cover the period of the creation of the new leisure centre, and I look forward to the wider business plan that does. But this is really good stuff, and I applaud what's in here, and I applaud that it is in the public session, and I'm really grateful that it's been brought in such a manner. If only all business plans were the same. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move on. Are there any other comments in the committee, please? Councillor Dilks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. It was just, and thank you to Barry and colleagues on the for the report. I just wondered if you might want to take the opportunity, Barry, and I appreciate it was only yesterday that we've been given a date by the Prime Minister of when the pools can open, swimming pools can open.
Yeah.
But I just wondered if you could possibly say anything about how that might happen. Will we be taking advantage of the first day of the opening, and I'm not sure how does that affects the rest of the leisure provision, if I could put it that way, Barry.
I'm sure we will, Councillor Dilks, Phil, but perhaps I go to Karen Whitfield on that. It's you know, we only heard yesterday evening, of course, so we haven't really had time to sit down and chat about it. But Karen, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dobson. So obviously the news is somewhat hot off the press. So we are having conversations today. The centres were operational, all of them, prior to the latest national lockdown. So we're hoping to resume to those operations as soon as possible. I think one of the things that we'll be discussing with the Board of Directors is the manner in which we do that, obviously, in the hope of limiting the council's exposure. I think the thing to note here is it's really easy to limit costs and mitigate any impact of coronavirus while the centres are closed. But obviously once we start to reopen them, especially under social distancing regulations, things do get a bit more tricky. So we will have to look at the staff that are available and the limited numbers of customers that will be able to use the facilities and form some plans as the Board of Directors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mike Exton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just having a quick scan through the actual charges, and I noticed that one of at the very end of the charges, it's important that for the board to revisit and revise the pricing strategy. Looking at the prices, I'm a bit surprised that Stamford, which is only a small leisure pool, is basically the same as what Deeping is, and to me that's totally unfair. Just diverting a little bit, when you looking at the market prices, sales, Stamford is penalised for a very successful market compared with Grantham. You know, surely there's a little bit of inconsistency on the pricing regarding Stamford small pool compared with Deeping. And I think these prices should be looked at, and to bring Stamford, which is a lot smaller pool and less activities available at the pool, to a reasonable price. Probably you could throw some light in, or probably Councillor Dobson.
I thank you for that, Councillor Exton. I think you find that the members who can use who use or have registered with the Stamford pool can also use the Deepings pool and the Bourne pool. So I don't know whether that helps in that. We still have staff in there, and I'm sure Karen Whitfield would be able to sort of break down in the number of the staff. It's not just what's available; it's also what it takes to run the places. So, Karen, do you want to just comment on that, please?
Can I just quickly come back? I grant what you're saying, Councillor Dobson, Barry. You know, but to me, there's a lot of inconsistency on the size of the pool. We had a meeting when we first took over in Stamford, and there was great plans great movement of modernising it a bit more. Evidently, that's gone by the board. And, you know, I'm sorry, it really certainly needs looking at, irrespective of the amount of staff that's got there. You know, sorry, I think it's totally wrong.
I think your point's noted, and we'll take that and discuss that at the board then, if that's okay with you.
Okay, are there any other comments from the committee? We do need to go into closed session in a minute. I just on the white papers, on the public papers, I think it's fair to say the exec summary I think tries to say this, and just to try and summarise it a little bit. The decisions around this company, as we are aware, are more than just strict commercial financial decisions. There's the broader kind of public good benefit and the benefit to our residents. And I mean, it's got to say, a lifetime looking at business plans, I get nervous of business plans where they're like that, because my understanding of them is challenged. So I suppose my question for the directors is, given what I've just said, that the success of this business plan is broader than the profit or loss account. Yeah. What are the success metrics that you're advising us to monitor and track on this company?
Oh, that's a good one.
Councillor Dew, can I come in?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully I can help you there. It's really important. We haven't got a sport and physical activity strategy of the council, which is something that the leisure team are on for drafting at the moment. That leisure strategy should also, it's not about, like you said, it's not about just the trading, the profit and loss account here. It's about the well-being of our residents, isn't it? And that's mental well-being and physical well-being of our residents, and making sure that our facilities are accessible to all. So that strategy should put that in place. However, there is a report going to the next committee, or the Culture and Visitor Economy ONS committee, which will show the performance metrics for this for the company, which actually picks up a number of quantitative, qualitative measures, as well as people around volunteering and engagement. How many people of physical activity, taking it from the Sport England surveying document. So there's a whole draft of KPIs that are contained in that report. Now, just remembering off the top of my head when the next meeting is, I think the report goes out next week, so that whole raft of metrics is included, and that is how this contract and this company can be measured in a quantitative, qualitative and a trading account basis. So there's 3 levels of metrics.
Okay, I think it would be useful for that to come to this committee as part of an appendix to this business plan as well, to help guide us on the direction of travel of this business. I mean, obviously there has to be some financial control, but I think this committee needs to understand what the target is as well, just so that we can charge our directors with that. And I would also, just to add to your comments, I'd also suggest there's an element of expectation management to our population as well, in that resources are finite, and that what we can deliver, there has to be some level of expectation management as to what we can achieve. Okay. Well, if there are no other comments in public forum, I'd like to go to private session. It's at this stage I need to read something to you. All right, the information in this document is exempt under paragraph 3, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, because it contains information of the financial business affairs of an individual or organisation that must be examined in private session. Therefore, I'd like to propose that we go into private session. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, sir. I will second that. On Dawson, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dawson. All those, if you want to abstain or vote, I'm going to do a vote by exemption here. So if you want to vote against or abstain from going into private session to discuss the pink papers, if you can vote by writing in the conversation window now, otherwise I'll assume that you will be voting in favour of going into private session. So if you can indicate now in the conversation window if you intend to abstain or vote against. I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, so after 10 seconds, nobody has indicated that they want to vote against or abstain from going into private session. Therefore, we are now in private session. If you can Democratic Services just confirm that it's only councillors